Hey guys, Matt from Soundrolling.com, and I wanted to give you a quick interview that I did with Glenn Sanders from Zaxcom, just talking about NeverClip, and then I'm going to release a few more things later in the week. So check it out. Fortunately, there's a slight delay in my recording program on my screen, so the sound might not quite match up. But I hope you find it useful. Let me know your thoughts right after the video. So thank you very much for joining me, Glenn. And yeah, just wanted to kind of get to grips with NeverClip. So if you could just explain that to me, that'd be amazing.
No problem, Matt. NeverClip is a something Zaxcom invented about, I guess, around almost like 7 years ago or so. What NeverClip is a method of extending the dynamic range of any input, any microphone input on any of our products, whether it be a wireless mic or a recorder. What NeverClip does, it uses two A to D converters on each input of a device to extend the dynamic range. So those A to D converters, there's a low range dynamic, low range converter and a high range converter, and we take the data from those converters, and we have the DSP automatically taking those two data streams and combining that into a single data stream to give us the extended dynamic range. And what is new and novel in this approach is just how the DSP takes those two signals and combines them together. The net result is just an extended dynamic range signal so that you don't have any kind of limiter or compressor distortion that you would normally have when a device is trying to limit using compressors or limiters, because that's artificially kind of reducing the dynamic range based on the level of the audio. Because we're able to keep everything totally linear, what you end up with in post production is just this signal that has tremendous dynamic range. And what we end up doing with NeverClip is actually shifting the audio data down so that we can fit greater dynamic range into the wave files, because a wave file has a normal dynamic range, maximum dynamic range of 144 dB, which is 24 bits. So by using NeverClip and offsetting the data, we're actually able to take the noise bits that are always in the file that are just meaningless noise and filling those bits with actual audio, giving us greater dynamic range in post production. So the great part about this is when you use NeverClip, you only have one track that is basically identical to a regular track, other than you might use a little more amplification in post production by pulling the fader up. But you only have one track, and that track is super quiet, super dynamic range, and this has really been a big benefit for our customers and post production.
And so the main place that you're obviously setting your gain, because you can still obviously change your gain as you're recording, but to have that extra range, I guess it's important to still, because you know you have more, I guess to still set your gain to the scene level, if you see what I mean. Is that the correct way to kind of like use this
Well, that
tool essentially?
well, yes, that's right. The best thing about NeverClip is it's transparent to the user. So you're going to set your gain as you normally would, maybe peaking on your meter somewhere between 0 and maybe plus 10, with plus 20 being clipping. And if you should actually run the meter over plus 20, there's still another 20 dB of dynamic range there that is usable. Because all of our processing is floating point. Once we get into the mixers that we have in the recorders, they don't clip internally. The only thing that we do is we have a gain reduction that you can set for each ISO track in one of our recorders, so that it actually adds extra dynamic range to the file. and you can add up to 24 dB of extra dynamic range. Typically, someone might add 12 to 18 dB of extra dynamic range. When you think of dynamic range, we're really talking about headroom, so that the ISO tracks absolutely are linear, they don't clip, and when you mix with your faders, because everything is floating point, everything perfectly mixes in to the mix track of the recorder. So, NeverClip just, and again, doesn't provide extra work for post-production by providing, a high and low track, because a lot of times sound mixers try to double record tracks with one that is maybe 10, 20 dB below the other track. So there's like the high level track and the low level track, and this just makes worse work for post production. NeverClip eliminated all of that because only one track is provided.
And this is something that's obviously available within the actual recorders itself, but it's also built into all of your wireless as well, which I think is obviously going to be the best solution, because obviously you're going to have lots of times where you've got talent, they're wired, and obviously if you hit the limiter at that stage, then that's it. But obviously you seem to have solved the problem there as well.
Right. I mean, basically, the way the wireless is set up, you would actually clip the microphone cartridge before you would clip the preamp on the transmitter, because the transmitter's dynamic range is somewhere around 123 dB. Typical lavalier dynamic range is like 103, 106. Lavalier, noise floors on lavaliers just aren't that good compared to the large diaphragm microphones that people use in their booms. So yeah, for the wireless, we end up with something that again is free from compressor distortion, limiter distortion, and of course, because our wireless is digital, there's no compander distortion or its artifacts either.
Fantastic.
So I think we're as close to a wire as you can get.
Brilliant.